reasons Jesse has
Oh, gotcha.
Wait, where am I supposed to pay this?
straight up.
I'll let you do yours first.
Let me do my magic.
It'll be better to come out of your magic to lead account first. And then, okay, sounds good.
Yeah, like I said, I tried to reach out and they haven't seen this.
No, it's really good.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the September 7th, 2022 City Council meeting. I'm going to start the meeting with a moment of silence, but I would like to ask that we all give a prayer of gratitude as well as safety for all the many firefighters that are out there fighting this evening and have been there in this past week trying to keep our community safe. Let's have that moment of silence. No. Okay, would you stand for the flag salute? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As for roll call, you'll notice that Mayor Sarah Bristol is not with us tonight. I do believe we have, I think it's Joel. Did I hear Joel come online? I heard a wah, wah, wah on the microphone.
Actually, that's another guest for one of the items.
Okay,
So Joel's not
okay,
on
great.
yet.
So it looks like Joel King is out of town tonight, so we'll go ahead and begin the meeting with a public hearing. At this time, I will open the public hearing to consider an application filed by Coppin Property Line Tax Lots 1900 and 3300 of map number 3605-21-CD. We will begin the hearing with a staff report, followed by a presentation by the applicant, statements by persons in favor of the application, statements by persons in opposition to the application, and an opportunity for additional comments by the applicant and staff. After that has occurred, the public comment portion will be closed and the matter will be discussed and acted upon by the council. Is there anyone present who wishes to challenge the authority of the council to hear this matter? Do any councilors wish to abstain from participating in this hearing or declare a potential conflict of interest? Are there any councilors who wish to disclose discussions, contacts, or other ex parte information they have received prior to this meeting regarding the application? In this hearing, the decision of the council will be based upon specific criteria which are set forth in the development code. All testimony which apply in this case are noted in the staff report. If you would like a copy of this report, please write that on a note to the city manager and one will be provided. It is important to remember if you fail to raise an issue with enough detail to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The hearing will now proceed with a report from staff.
Good evening, councilors and staff. So this is a property line vacation. It's a request to allow the vacation of the property line between two tax lots 1900 and 3300 of map 360521CD. The applicant would like to consolidate their properties to pursue a separate development permit application for an RV park. This relates to the council goals of facilitate sustainable, manageable growth. Here's a street view of the proposed location. Timber Mountain is the area to the right of that picture there. And across the street, you're going to see River's Edge Restaurant. Here's that map again. Again, just noting those two properties that they want to consolidate into one. This was a approved site plan that the UAPC approved last week. Findings of fact will go to the next meeting next week. They're proposing a 28 spot RV park. So for the criterion for approval, the resultant property configuration does not create a substandard condition relative to the requirements of our development code, and the proposal is not contrary to public health, safety, welfare, and convenience, or any other purpose of Article 17.
Thank you.
We did not receive any public comments for this project. So with that, there's no cost implication. Call to action date needs to be by November 11th for our 120-day deadline. The alternatives that are set are to approve the property line vacation as proposed, in which case it will become final 30 days after approval, or deny the property line vacation as proposed. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Eric. Do we have any questions for Eric? I don't see anybody scrambling to that mic, so I guess if there's no questions, we'll turn it out to the audience. Is there anybody here who speak in favor? And is there anyone here to speak against? I don't see that either, so we'll turn it right back to council for deliberations. Yes, Rick?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance vacating the common property line between tax lots 900 and 3300 of map 36-5-21 CD and have it read by title only, first reading.
Okay, is there a second? Thank you, DJ. All right, you made the motion. Rick, how do you vote?
Yes?
DJ?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Valerie, yes. Rob?
Yes. Yes.
And Vanessa?
Yes.
Okay, passes 8-0. That was easy. First reading.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass vacating the common property lines between tax lots 1900 and 3300 of map number 360521 CD.
All right. Is there another motion? Anybody want to? Okay, Vanessa?
I move to adopt the ordinance vacating the common property line between tax lots 1900 and 3300 of map number 36-05-21-CD and have it read by title only, second reading.
Do I see a second? Thank you, Rick, for the second. And how do you vote? I guess Vanessa start.
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Valerie, yes. Rob?
Yes.
Kurt, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, started. Okay. Karen?
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass vacating the common property lines between tax lots 1900 and 3300 of map number 360521 CD.
Okay, and since that's the second reading, it is passed. So we'll move on to the second quasi-judicial, and that is, at this time I will open the public hearing to consider an application filed by Roca Community College property regarding annexation. The application is about annexation. We will begin the hearing with a staff report, followed by presentation by the applicant, statements by persons in favor of the application, statement by persons in opposition to the application, and an opportunity for additional comments by the applicant and staff. After that has occurred, the public comment portion will be closed and the matter will be discussed and acted upon by the council. Is there anyone present who wishes to challenge the authority of the council to hear this matter? Do any councilors wish to abstain from participating in this hearing or declare a potential conflict of interest? Are there any councilors who wish to disclose discussions, contacts, or other ex parte information they have received prior to this meeting regarding the application? In this hearing, the decision of the council will be based upon specific criteria which are set forth in the development code. All testimony which apply in this case are noted in the staff report. If you would like a copy of the report, please write that on a note to the city manager and one will be provided. It is important to remember if you fail to raise an issue with enough detail to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The hearing will now proceed with a report from staff.
Staff would like to continue this hearing to October 19th.
Okay, so at this point, I will like to hear a motion to have this put off to September, what was the date, 21st?
Sorry, October 19th.
October 19th,
Yes.
okay, that's the difference. Okay, so I will go put this out to I guess I'll put it out first to the public to see if there's any comments from the public. No comments from the public, and with that, now I'll bring it back, and DJ?
Move to stay this till October 19th.
Okay, is there a second? Thank you, Rick. Okay, DJ, how do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Valerie, yes. Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
And Brian, and, excuse me, Rick.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that passes, am I correct? Even though we don't have to do a second reading of that. All right. Okay, that will be pushed off as well. So that brings us to council action. Our first council action is a resolution awarding Ink and Lace LLC a business retention and relocation assistance matching grant up to $50,000 for infrastructure and system development charges. And here we go. Eric's with us again.
Okay, so this resolution would award Ink and Lace LLC a business retention and relocation assistance matching grant up to $50,000 for infrastructure and system development charges for a building located at 213 Southeast H Street. This relates to the council goals of encourage economic opportunities. Here is the location of the proposed building. It's currently in the intersection basically of 7th Street and H Street across from Oregon Pizza and Pour Authority. So a little bit of background, Ink and Lace LLC is a health and beauty business currently leasing space at 215 Southeast 6th Street, Suite 301. This lease will not be renewed. The owner is going to relocate and expand their current business to a newly purchased property which is located at 213 Southeast H Street. The current sewer line needs emergency replacement as roots have infiltrated the pipe causing failure. And then the existing bathroom inside will also be remodeled to add a sink for client use, which will require payment of system development charges. The total estimated cost of this project is $91,189. Eligible expenses for this grant total approximately $17,730, with another $200 for sewer SDCs. Matched funds from this grant up to $50,000 will be on a reimbursement basis from actual business expenditures or encumbrances used specifically for the improvements associated with the approved grant. And the anticipated reimbursement for those expenses are currently only estimated at approximately $8,965. And that's based on those sewer line and SDCs. So the matching grant request is to reimburse costs associated with sewer utility upgrades and SDC fees, which are associated with the business relocation and rehab. The grant application is in Exhibit A of your packet. It also includes a letter from Lacey Pros, who is the owner of Ink and Lace, and is included with the application stating the need for grant funding, including cost estimates for the utility upgrades and SDCs. The applicant has also been tentatively approved for the building facade grant and the Light the Storefront security camera grant, programs which are pending construction, installation, and final invoice review by city staff. So cost implications. For the expenses, total cost of the project, again, is approximately $91,000. Matched funds up to $50,000 will be on a reimbursement basis from actual expenses, and those anticipated eligible reimbursable expenses are only estimated at $8,965 at this time. We do have funds available under Capital Project LB 6394, which is the Business Retention and Relocation Assistance. The current cash balance as of today is $190,506.08. Outstanding grant reimbursements do take up part of that amount for Erickson Dental, which we're working with Sten Erickson to get invoices paid. Wild River Brewing and Pizza, which has an expired grant, but they will be wanting to come back for an extension as well once they're complete. And then Rogue Cleaners, which you're going to hear at the next item for presentation, they're looking to extend their grant another time. So that leaves the total remaining really available for this BRAG grant of $36,000. Again, we're only looking at potentially spending almost $9,000 for eligible reimbursable expenses, which if the maximum grant amount reimbursements are requested by those others, it really leaves that $36,000. So call to action, council discretion. Alternatives are to approve the proposed grant, modify the grant, or deny the proposed grant award.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So, any questions? Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So that total remaining amount available under this fund is $36,000. Is that before this is awarded, or is that going to be after this is awarded?
That is before this is awarded.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, no other questions. I will turn it out and see if there's anybody in the audience. I don't know if our people, Lacey's here who wants to talk or not. Don't see anybody running to the podium, so I will assume not. Anybody want to speak about that? All right, if not, I turn it back to council for discussion. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, before a motion's made, I just think that council needs to be mindful that I don't think we have a renewable funding source for this fund. So it sounds like we're kind of dwindling it down, and we're going to need to think about what we want to do with it in the future. But that being said, I'll go ahead and make a motion for approval.
Okay. Seconded from Rob. Any more discussion? All right, so I will go ahead and say, Brian, vote.
Yes.
Valerie votes yes. Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And DJ?
Yes.
It passes. Thank you. So are we up again? Don't sit down. Next resolution, amending resolution number 21-7041, previously amended by resolution number 22-7173, awarding Three Peaks Holding LLC a business retention and relocation assistant matching grant up to $50,000 for property located at 228 Southeast K Street.
Okay, last one. So this resolution would authorize a 12-month time extension to a business retention and relocation assistance matching grant for Three Peaks Holdings, up to $50,000 for 228 Southeast K Street. This relates to council goals of encourage economic opportunities by facilitating an environment to encourage business prosperity and economic opportunities. Here is the location of the future development. It's a parking lot that's located between 7th and 8th Street on K, which is adjacent to People's Bank. So a little about the project. The site's currently developed as an underutilized auxiliary parking lot with no existing structures on the property. The current grant request is to allow for a mixed-use development of a new 2-story building, which is approximately 4,000 square feet. With a laundromat, dry cleaner, and residential units on the second floor. There'll be 4 one-bedroom units on that second floor. Road Cleaner and Laundromat has been in business since 1963, and in addition to expanding their current footprint, there will now be affordable housing options located downtown. And the total estimated cost for this new development is over $1 million. So a little bit of background for this one. The City Council adopted a program to support the retention and expansion of small businesses within the city limits and urban growth boundary. In addition to assisting existing companies with infrastructure upgrades, the BRAG program is also intended to assist with SDCs and reimbursement district charges, which are related to new upgrades and/or business relocation. On May 5th, 2021, City Council approved the original BRAG grant for this one with a 1-year expiration, which included fire suppression and infrastructure expenses for this same applicant at the same site. On April 20th, council approved a 4-month extension for this applicant, which approval expired on August 20th. Prior to this expiration, the applicant did reach out and request an additional 12-month extension, mainly due to project delays and to allow for completion of the project. And this project is currently under review by the building department for building permit. So again, with this one, there was originally a budget of $400,000 that was approved back in FY21 for this BRAG program. Funding source is Urban Renewal Agency dollars. Again, just to reiterate, the approximate balance left in the BRAG program is about $190,500, with Wild River, Three Peaks, and Erickson Dental all on those, and now Ink and Lace as well. But in that $36,000 that was remaining from that last presentation, this $50,000 was already accounted for this particular grant. So call to action dates tonight are council's discretion. Alternatives can be to approve the grant time extension request. You can modify the grant time extension request, or you can deny the grant time extension request.
Okay, I'm going to start with a question that I have of you. It is a 12-month. Did you do a 12-month, or did you do till he's finished?
So they did a 12-month extension. The last extension they got was a 4-month extension, and I think there was a little bit of confusion on that last extension. I think they thought that they just needed to get permits approved and not the construction complete, because we require a certificate of occupancy prior to issuing those grant reimbursement funds.
And so he's currently going through the permit process, and then he's assuming it'll take the 12 months after that to finish up.
Yeah, he's very confident that the 12 months will be more than adequate, so we don't have to come back to council again for another extension.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Brian.
Are we anticipating that they'll use the full 50,000?
For this project, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to about this resolution? Either for or against? All right, with that being null, I will come back to the council for a motion. Thank you, DJ.
I move to approve the grant time extension as presented.
All right, thank you. Do I see a second? Thank you, Rick. And with that, I will go back to DJ and ask, how do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Valerie, yes. Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 7-0. All right, and that brings us to another resolution. Thank you, Eric. Authorizing the city manager to amend the current agreement with Slayden Construction Group, Incorporated, for Phase 1C Design Build Services. Design services for the replacement water treatment plant project number WA6207. So welcome, and we'll start off with Jason.
Thank you, Council. I have a brief but fairly detailed presentation to try and let you know all of the details, but this is to provide an update on the Phase 1A services, which was technology selection, 1B services, which was membrane procurement, and discuss Phase 1C services, which is the design services for the replacement water treatment plant. And the relationship to your council goals is, of course, maintain and operate and expand our infrastructure to meet the community's needs, build a new replacement water treatment plant. So on September 15th, 2021, Council did approve Phase 1A services with Slayden Carollo to begin technology selection. That was where we decided what it was that the replacement water treatment plant was going to be and what it was going to look like. This included a series of workshops with staff, the design builder, and the owner's representative to develop the most advantageous technology for the replacement water treatment plant. And as you recall, we came before you with several alternatives. One was just a conventional treatment plant with ozone. The second was a membrane treatment plant utilizing powdered activated carbon. And at that time, council did select that we go with a membrane filtration and powdered activated carbon addition. This was a very positive barrier, providing very high quality finished water, cost-effective technology to combat future contaminants, including algal toxins, taste and odor, The high level of automation, as you recall from our conversations, allows for 24/7 operation with less staffing required and had a slightly lower initial capital cost. However, that was offset by a slightly higher operations cost. Since that time, we've done a bunch of other work. We have been working to refine that design to figure out what it is that we're building, including multiple renderings, as well as proving that the site will accommodate the full 45 MGD capacity, which would be our water rights, and that is well into the future. In addition, we've worked with the team, and these are all preliminary concepts. There's still a lot of stuff that's going to be moving around. And by consolidating a lot of the buildings, we are able to build less buildings at smaller footprints and fit more in under a very compact design, thus saving money. So council did approve Phase 1B services on June 15th. 1B was to perform technology selection. Was to perform selection of the membrane system. Sorry, I went backwards there pretty far. As many of our design decisions are going to be built around that membrane system supplier. Paul membranes are going to be different than another company. And so it was important that we choose that membrane system supplier before we started designing the system. It could even mean that it would change the footprint of the building, the size of the pumps, the head requirements of the pumps. And on August 8th, the design builder did issue a request to proposals to the membrane community. Those proposals are now due back to the design builder on September 8th, where we will start a selection process. That's actually tomorrow. Now we're before you to ask for consideration for 1C, which will be the design services, which will span the next 20 months and complete the entire design of the replacement water treatment plant. Phase 1C services is comprised of project management and coordination, basis of design, permitting assistance and public outreach, as well as guaranteed maximum price development. The 1C amendment also includes several contractual changes, and these are very important, which ensures that the agreement is in compliance with all federal and state fundings. And that's just basically some language changes that talk about Buy American as well as minority business support and other items. Under those specific tasks, the project management and coordination includes all of our progress reports, invoices, status meetings, change management, should that be needed, schedule management, risk management, and work management systems, which are kind of how we handle all of the documents, and there's going to be lots and lots of documents as we move through the design. Basis of design is one of the smallest components because the basis of design is essentially complete. It is the smallest portion of the 1C services. We will have to keep refining that report though as we move through the design process. Other items may be eliminated or added to the project. And as that is done, we'll want to update that document to reflect what it is that we're designing. We did eliminate a few things as we're moving through the process, and I wanted to make you aware of those. We did the basis of design the initial basis of design did include construction of new buildings at the old water treatment plant site to house electrical and generators and things like that. We have now eliminated those as a cost-saving measure. We can use outdoor electrical gear and build some canopies over it. They make very robust outdoor electrical gear, and it will save us quite a bit of revenue, or quite a bit of money. We also are eliminating major seismic work on the intake structure, and this is a fairly large departure, but the reason is we have done a detailed analysis of the structure. It is at its almost max capacity. What that means is that it has to be upgraded to get beyond our 22.5 million gallons, or we believe it does. So investing a large amount of money in seismically hardening it when we know we're going to have to build another intake structure right behind that is not a good investment of our funds today. And so what we are going to do is we're going to make some modest seismic upgrades to it. We are going to make some minor structural. We're going to repair the screen cleaning mechanisms and make sure that it's going to be very serviceable. And then we'll start making plans for when that has to be expanded to build a seismically resilient intake structure slightly upstream of the existing structure. Under design services, this includes a couple of major components I want to go through. Some of them seem a little bit weird, survey and arborist, but we have to install a very large water main under a very large redwood tree. The only way to get the water line in the alignment that needs to be there the most effective is we have to bore under the giant sequoia that sits in the front yard of the water treatment plant. We want to make sure that we protect that tree. It is part of the historic legacy of that property. So we will be hiring an arborist to do a fairly detailed evaluation to help the contractor design the bore pits and the bore operations to ensure that that tree is unharmed. We also will be doing raw water pump station modeling. This will give us an exact value for what the max capacity of that pump station is, but it also will help us to size the pumps and place them in the structure correctly to ensure that they don't cavitate. Cavitation is the #1 killer of pumps, and as we are increasing the head and the distance that those pumps are having to pump, we could run into problems with that. They are also going to perform hydraulic transient modeling on the 22 or the 2,000 feet of new raw water pipeline. And what that is, as pumps are started and stopping and the flows change, the plant runs pretty steady state, and so we don't have this issue. With the raw water flow, there may be actual fluctuations as the membranes ramp up and down, but that could create surges in that line, which could be devastating, could actually cause the line to fail under the right conditions. So we'll be doing some modeling on that to figure out where we need to install surge anticipation. Design services is broken up into 4 major components. That's our 30, 60, 90, and conformed drawings. 30% of course takes us all the way through the 30% design. That's where we pretty much put the bulk of it on paper. We know what everything's going to look like. Once we have the 30% design completed, some of the things that will be frozen will be the site layout. That's when we're going to say, okay, well, we really thought that we would like this thing over here. Now we're going to move it over here. At 30%, that decision's made. We're not going to go back. Major components and equipment and piping will all be decided. The building envelopes, that means the shape of the buildings, will be decided, as well as their form and structural details, and the raw water pipeline alignment and offsite utility routing. At that point, we'll talk about, we move from 30%, and between 30 and 60, we're going to do value engineering, which I'll talk about in a second. But there will be about 5 design development meetings related to this that'll get us to that 30% design. There is a lot of work to get to that point. At 60% design, we're going to freeze further items. That'll be the interior layout, where that equipment is located within the buildings, and equipment and pipes. The specification of all of the rest of the major equipment will be finalized, the interior floor plans, as well as any on-site major yard piping. There will be a series of 6 design development meetings to get to the 60% design. Moving on to 90%, this is where we're almost done. We've got about a complete set of documents and specifications. Almost everything is roughly complete. We will then kind of finalize the rest of the last little details, and from there we will be moving to what's called the conformed design. That's going to be the final design, and from that the design builder will create a GMP for council's consideration. That GMP, of course, is the guaranteed maximum price of the project. The project is going to include just under 700 drawings, 24 by 36, over 300 specifications, which include things from disinfection, traffic control, hydrophilic rubber water stop were a couple that I looked up, but pretty much there will be a specification for every component that goes into that project. So it is a very major undertaking. So value engineering comes between 30 and 60%. This is where we actually create a panel of experts, and they look at our design and at the 30% design, and they provide feedback. So the design builder will come in and present the design to our team. It'll include members of the staff, plus the owner's rep, plus other engineering firms potentially, and other water professionals. After the design builder has presented that, the team will get together and kind of come up with options for where we can provide the project with more value. More value is a double-edged sword. Some of the more value is going to be reducing cost. Other is going to be increasing our life cycle value. And that is a 2-day process, pretty major undertaking. Phase 1C will also likely include some additional early procurements, or at least allow for us to look at that. Metal buildings is another one that we'll want to be looking at. The buildings that we're looking at are metal. They are a very long lead time item today. They're very hard to get. So we may want to look at procuring those once we get the building envelope dialed in and the structural components understood. I did have another one on there. Electrical switchgear. Electrical switchgear is another one that is notoriously hard to get, and this plant will use a lot of power. So those are another item that are likely to be procured fairly early, although likely farther down. Also is permitting assistance and public outreach. The design builder will help us with that. There's quite a bit of permitting, as you can imagine, all the way from pre-app, site plan, development plan, 1200C, building permits. The Oregon Health Authority has to review those 700 sheets of drawings and approve them in addition. So, I mean, there's a lot of work to get done. And then, of course, is the GMP development. The design builder is going to be developing intermediate GMPs that we will be reporting on at the 60-90% milestone, as well as the conformed set to come back for your consideration. So cost implication, as presented on 8/22, we are still looking at about $111,622,000. That does include well over $6 million in expenses that have already been incurred, including property, site clearance, and preliminary engineering work. The cost for Amendment 2 to Phase 1A is $5.724 million. The funds are available within Project 6207, the water treatment plant replacement. We do tentatively have the call to action as today, but can be deferred at your discretion. And with that, I would be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm just going to ask a quick question here, because I was noticed when we were first going through it, I just want to make sure of the difference between the 1B and the 1C stage. So basically, when we went out for the 1B stage, we had decided what we wanted. We knew we wanted the membranes, and so therefore you went out to the membrane community, because they all do it just a little bit different, to kind of get an idea of what they would put together for us. So that's what's coming in tomorrow, correct?
So correct. The membrane system suppliers will be submitting bids to Slayden and the team on the 8th, which is tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We will be coming back to you probably in mid-October to actually select the membrane system supplier and get them under contract. It is very important because, as you described, Counselor, every membrane supplier does it a little bit different. Their racks are going to be a little bit different size. They're, different heights. They're going to have different pumping requirements, different backwash and chemical requirements. And so it's important that that is selected today. So that when the design team goes to work, they're able to design the entire plant around that central feature.
Okay. How long does that take, making that decision? You said it's coming.
Well, it depends on how many proposals. We are hoping to be back in front of you in October, so we hope in a couple of weeks. There's definitely going to be some clarifications. I almost guarantee it that when the proposals come in, they're all going to have exceptions. With a large proposal like this, there always are, so we're going to have to evaluate all of those exceptions and then get clarification from those suppliers. The design builder will be working with us and the owner's rep to kind of get through there to make sure that we select the best system for the city.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? DJ.
I feel compelled to talk about the 20-month timeline.
Yeah.
Schedule is everything. Is that generous? Is that constrained? I mean, I know this is a very difficult question I'm asking, but just a little elaboration on that would be great.
Wayne, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to speak to that. So Wayne Gresh with Corolla, who is on the design team, I know that we put a lot more pressure to get them to design faster, but there's a lot of work to do. So
sure, understand this question is coming to understand that this is a very complex process. So
You take a minute, make sure no, it's not. It's on the other one. It's on the microphone. Little button silver, hit it, and it's red. Is it red?
Yep, it's red.
Thank
you.
And make sure that the mic is up.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
It is a complex process, and we, in our designs, we move through in a very linear fashion. And so, and in doing that, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And what we put in our schedule is a number of workshops to be able to involve the city staff, Jason and Adam, and as we move through each phase of that. And there are some concurrent tasks in there, but what we did in preparing the schedule in each of these deliverables, we have our design team working on it, meeting with the city staff. We also have internal quality control reviews before we make the submittal to the city. The other thing in design build that you get the advantage of is that as a design team, we prepare the documents, and then Slayden Constructors, cost estimating team and scheduling team, and their professionals that procure equipment, they then take those documents and prepare those estimates and give us feedback on what could be improved or what might be able to reduce cost. So in each of the 30%, the 60%, and the 90% steps, we have those tasks. And when we scheduled it out, when you look at the timeframes for that, the 20 months is what it came out to be. I can say from my 40 years in experience that that's about the right time frame, unless you're not going to get the owner's input or you're not going to take the time to develop really good cost estimates on it. It just takes time to do it. You can do projects faster, but typically you don't give the owner much input and you just deliver it.
So to follow up, yeah, I'm not
Right.
at all trying to shave
No.
days here. So from what I understand correctly, it's been scheduled out sort of in a linear fashion, but you do expect some things to happen concurrently.
Yeah, and the other advantage we have is the early procurement, right? So like the membrane procurement package, from a escalation and cost standpoint, you're going to find out tomorrow. And that sets a large majority of the equipment that we have. And the next piece is the electrical gear, the building, those major cost elements will be able to be procured early. And that then gives us the ability to know those costs and manage those risks. And as we go through it, then what you have remaining are things like the concrete foundations and things that actually Slayden can self-perform as a risk management tool. So through the project, you won't just get to the end and have one bid package to bid. We've already procured and selected a lot of it. So.
Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. So I have a few questions. The first one is around the membrane technology and the membrane provider.
Yeah.
You said that the design will depend on the company that we choose. What happens if 20 or 30 years from now that company goes out of business and we have to switch to a different membrane provider?
Yeah, that's a tremendously good question. So we wrote a specification that really focused on companies that have been in business for that 20 or 30 years, not all of them 20 or 30, but that have been in business for a very well-established period of time. The other criteria, we took what we heard from you, and our system is designed to accept membranes from different manufacturers. So while I am going to buy a membrane system from Councilor DeLagrange, when you do go out of business or quit making membranes or can't supply them, I can go to Councilor Collins, buy his membranes. Now, I may need to change some things. I may have to get pumps that provide pressure at a little bit higher rate or at a higher flow, or change the chemical feed systems to a different chemical. But we are going to have that ability to switch midstream with minor changes. The racks themselves will accept membranes from multiple manufacturers.
Okay, and then what's the expected useful life of this plant once it's complete?
Boy, I want to say 50 to 80 years. 80. Components of it far shorter. You know, pumps 20 years. You know, the building themselves, we're building steel frame buildings, which have a life expectancy. I'm guessing 80 years or more. I don't want to put a number to it, but it's fairly extensive.
Okay, and then You presented some new information about the intake structure, and it sounds like at some point we're going to either need to build a second or just to replace the current one. What's the plan there?
Yeah, so the plan always was that the intake structure was undersized for the full capacity of, we've talked about that at multiple workshops previously, but when we started doing the analysis of the requirements to seismically harden the structure, we were actually going to reduce the capacity of the structure because we had to make the inside so much smaller by building up additional concrete structure to support the structure in the event of a seismic event. So that really led us to do a pretty detailed financial analysis of that cost benefit, and it really doesn't pay to invest in this structure when we're going to run out of capacity probably just beyond the 22.5 MGD. So we were always going to be looking at another one to get to 30 MGD. At that point, it would be our recommendation that we build an entirely new intake structure sized at the 45, which would be your ultimate build-out capacity, upstream where the old intake is, which is actually a much more advantageous location for that intake structure.
Okay, so we would be decommissioning the current intake and moving to the new intake?
Yep.
Can you spitball a number for me on how much that's going to cost? To the nearest $5 million?
5 million, no.
Or 10, or whatever you want to just spitball a number on that.
What did Lake Oswego pay for their intake structure? 45 MGD, 45 million? Yeah. So what I'm hearing whispered in my ear is about $1 million per MGD. And
Okay.
that's out 30 years. I mean, if we do it till we run out of capacity, that's 30 some years.
Okay. I think 22.5 MGD is supposed to get us to 2045.
Yep.
So about 20 years, we're going to have to take that cost, which would be, I'm hearing 45 million-ish, if we build to full.
Correct.
Okay.
Potentially.
And then at that point in 2045, we're also going to need to increase the capacity at the plant because we're only building to 22.5. So do we know what those costs are going to be for, just spitballing the cost for that upgrade?
I mean, you could take today's costs and double it plus inflation for 25 plus years. So if we're looking at $100 million today, it's going to be $100 million plus inflation for the next 25 years. So pretty significant number.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? DJ and then Vanessa. Oh, wait, I'm going to go Vanessa first. Yeah, and then DJ.
My question falls under the original scope of work on page 62, item B4. It states, design builder shall post advertisements for subcontractor solicitations in one regional publication and one local publication.
Yep.
I was curious the justification for the minimal posting of advertisements. Why not post in every local and regional publication for the best possible price of work?
So I guess I would, most of what they're going to be posting is going to be very specialized work. We are definitely, we've tasked Steve and his team with hiring as much possible local talent as possible. What we have found personally is once we post it on our website and it gets posted, say in the DJC, the Daily Journal of Commerce, most of the companies that are doing this work do find that. But if it's council's desire that we advertise here and in the Medford Mail Tribune, we would be happy to do that.
I do know there's also separate requirements for federal funding, and there's a separate publication that we're required to publicize in, so I think that we could also benefit from publicizing in that as well. I believe it's El Latino de Hoy.
I will make sure that we are in compliance with that.
Anything else, Vanessa? Or wait. Okay, great. Go ahead, DJ.
So this tree, when you mentioned the tree, I heard, oh, we need to protect the tree. And whereas I understand that that's an important tree,
Yeah.
could you also speak to the stability of having an intake underneath that tree?
So there will not be an intake under that tree. Does that make sense? It's the tree
Or
that's in the
whatever
front yard.
infrastructure
Yeah,
that's
it's actually
going
a
under that.
pipeline.
Okay.
And the pipeline will be off to the side, but as we know, roots can spread out. And so the tree, the arborist will determine how far away we need to be or how close we can get and how deep underneath the roots we can be to ensure the tree health. It's a pretty minor thing, but it is important, I think, that we do our best to avoid it.
Sure, important enough for just a brief question. Now, when the gentleman came up there and spoke, he said coordination with the owner is very important. And I need to ask, is there anything that the city council can do to help in that effort? I don't know if we've been responsive enough to, not threaten timelines, et cetera. I think this is a very important understanding.
Keep doing what you're doing. Ask a lot of questions. Hold us accountable. Make us come before you and give the reports. We'll be sending out monthly reports shortly from the whole project. Keep in tune. Ask us questions. That's what you can do.
That brings me to a question that I had, because you talked about a 30%. There are going to be 5 design development meetings. What's a design development meeting? Who goes to those meetings, and how do we get involved with those meetings? And then between 30 and 60, I think there was 6 design meetings. So I was going to ask exactly what those were for that very purpose, is to keep it.
The design development meetings are kind of intensive workshops. Usually they're shorter duration, 2 to 3 hours. They're going to be generally focused on a specific topic. If I'm looking to Wayne for a validation here. As an example, we'll probably have a design development meeting focused on the laboratory. How does that get laid out? What's involved in there? Early on, they're going to be focused on bigger picture things, such as pump placement and how much spacing do we need in between pumps to adequately be able to maintain them? Do we need permanently installed overhead hoists to remove those, or can we use a forklift to get in and out? It's a lot of those kind of day-to-day details. It really is between the O&M and the engineering staff to kind of get together to talk about, here's what some engineering norms are, here's what the staff feels they need, and then we kind of work out between those.
Okay, so those basically are done within the team and what have you, and then, and I guess the question is, will be updated. You talked about something that comes out monthly to give us an idea of what's
we will
going.
be getting a monthly report which talks about everything that's been accomplished, and that comes with the invoicing. As you recall from the wastewater treatment plant project, we sent those out to you monthly in the city manager's report. If the council is interested, we would be glad to include those in the, if Aaron wants to attach those to the manager's report. Or we can just send them out separately, however is best.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you. And I will turn it out to see if there's anybody out in the public arena who would like to speak. Go ahead.
Green?
No, it's on the microphone.
Not in opposition or not for either, but because I've always been against. But if I heard the story correctly tonight, we're only going to temporary the intake structure, but this is all about a major earthquake. So the intake structure fails in that major earthquake, we still don't have a functioning water plant. If I heard correctly. Maybe I didn't hear correctly, but if you don't have an intake structure, you don't have a functioning water plant. Thank you.
Anybody else like to add anything? Okay, and I guess we can turn around and ask the question to our people if they have any response to that.
I can because
Red. It's red when you're on.
Okay, I'm on. So I'm Wayne Gresh with the Kroll Engineers, and when we talked to Jason about the intake and the benefit cost of it, we did consider that because overturning of that intake is the probable seismic failure mode. But what you can do, and what Jason has already, is the ability to just put raw water pump intake down there. If the seismic event happened and the intake failed, he simply can go down with a raw water pump, connect it to the pipeline, and pump to the water treatment plant. And for the duration that's needed during the earthquake recovery period, that will be fine. The plant will be able to take that raw water, which we assume is going to have high turbidity in it because of landslides and other events that are coming down into the river, and produce a water that would meet the community's needs. I think the other thing is the city's already invested in the mobile treatment units. And so when you look at that mobile treatment unit, they're doing the same thing. And they're going to put those around the city. So I think the decision not to upgrade the intake at this point in time is probably pretty wise.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question, Brian, or no? Okay, at this point in time, I guess I'm looking for some sort of a motion. Brian?
Oh, I was going to move into discussion, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, no, this discussion would be great. Yeah.
Okay. So as everybody probably knows, I'm really concerned about the costs on this project. They've gone up about 35% in less than a year. We're not going to have a guaranteed maximum price for another year and a half. We have no idea what that number is going to be in a year and a half. Could be the same, could be 150, could be more. We don't have confirmation that the rate structure that we have, or that previous council put in place, will be sufficient to service that amount of debt. We have not gotten that confirmation yet, if I'm correct. Jason, is that right?
We're working on that as we speak.
Okay. In 20 years, we're going to need to spend money to increase the capacity of this new plant, which is going to cost many more millions of dollars. We haven't accounted for financing a new intake structure, which is going to cost $45 million. I think we're out over our skis a lot on this. And right now, we're not that far into it. We're only about $6 million into it. So I would very much like to advise council to maybe take a minute and see if we have any other alternatives that might save our taxpayers and our citizens a lot of money. There was an alternative, as everybody knows, to do a full rehabilitation of the existing plant that would come in at about half the cost of this plant and would last until 2065. So I'm not comfortable with how these numbers are looking. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and we don't know what the price is going to be for another year and a half. So I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Other discussion? Well, I will take off my mayor's hat for just a minute and just say that I feel strongly, I've been involved with this since 2015 when I looked back at, there was a number of years before that is discussed. I think it has been hashed around for a long time in terms of the cost. We have looked at refurbishing our old plant, but I will tell you, to refurbish a plant when you're using the plant is a little frightening at the same time, and that's something that has been discussed. I'm sorry for the rolling. I don't appreciate it, Brian. Anyway, so I really feel that we have vetted this numerous times. I look at Jackson, Mississippi, a town that is kind of has its issues with water, and I don't want to be on the council that said we could keep kicking the can down the road when we know that the current water treatment plant was built in 1930. It's been added on to twice. The weakest part of it is the add-ons. So to add on again, to me, isn't where we need to go. I think that you're always taking a risk. There are only a certain number of places that build water facilities, treatment facilities, and we have those professionals here with us, and they have been working with us for numerous years. And I think it would be terrible to shut it down and stop the process, because we don't know the future. We are on the road, but I think we're on the road where we need to be. There's always going to be a fear of this, that, or whatever, but I would tend to go on the basis that I want to see us moving forward into having a new water treatment as opposed to stepping backward. So I am in favor of moving forward. Any other comments? Go ahead, Vanessa.
I would agree that I do share the concerns of Councilor DeLaGrange in regards to the price increases, but the fact of the reality in 2022 is that unfortunately the federal government does not invest in local communities like it used to. Before I was born, the federal government used to finance large-scale projects like this in small communities, leaving them to decide how to finance smaller projects that they were actually able to afford, but because the federal government, regardless of who holds office, has chosen to leave small communities behind like ours, it is left to us to take care of ourselves. So unfortunately, we're faced with a situation where we have to decide whether to move forward or to not move forward, and a community will not flourish without clean water. So although it feels very uncomfortable to be involved with these uncertainty of the price increases and the ongoing price increases that we're experiencing, it feels semi-inevitable as water is crucial for life. The only amendment that I'd like to see tonight is the one stated on page 62, that all solicitations under that scope of work will be publicized in all local and regional journals for the best possible price.
Anybody else want to speak? Yes, DJ.
Yeah, I just want to mirror what you said, Val. I totally agree. This is the direction that we've decided to take, and I won't be a part of obstructing that progress. So I'll be voting in favor of this.
Anybody else want to speak to this motion? Brian?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion to put a stay on this until we can see what the estimated cost would be for a full rehabilitation of the existing plant to get us till 2065. Yeah, thanks.
Is there a second? Second by Vanessa. Discussion on that? Go ahead, Vanessa.
Just for clarification, I second only to hold a vote.
Okay, Brian, the motion was to put a stay on the water treatment plant until we could come up with a plan to rehab the one, restructure the one we have till 2065, am I correct?
Essentially, it was more of a updated cost estimate for that option.
Okay. Okay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Valerie votes no. Rob?
No.
Kurt?
No.
Vanessa?
No.
Rick?
No.
DJ?
No.
Okay, can I have another motion, or can Valerie make the motion? I guess I'm a counselor, so I can make that motion. Okay, I will make a motion to, I'm looking for the motion here, authorizing the city manager to amend the current agreement with Slayden Construction Group for Phase 1C design build services for the replacement of the water treatment plant project WA 6207, and I will add Vanessa's amendment to that just to make sure that we are advertising in all those appropriate places. So is there a second? Thank you, Vanessa. Second? All right, I made the motion. I vote yes. Rob?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Did we go back to discussion? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have a brief clarifying question about
Okay.
the amendment. There's merit to it. I'm acknowledging that, but the question for you, Jason, is currently how we're operating in the journals. That we're in compliance, correct? We're not breaching compliance by missing some minor markets.
I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't know all of the rules
Sure.
related to federal dollars, but I do want to look in, because I think you mentioned it was a Spanish magazine. Is that what the title you said, or did you say the title of the magazine?
El Latino de Hoy. It was a requirement when we received Dollar Mountain Trailhead dollars that we publicized in that, so.
Yep. So I will ensure that wherever we're advertising is in compliance with the dollars that are being spent, for sure. But if I could clarify, because your motion was in all local and regional journals, I just would like a little clarification on what that means to you, if you could.
Vanessa, I'm just asking Vanessa because that was her.
It wasn't my motion, but
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
Well, it
didn't
was,
quite
yeah, I
catch
was
it.
just adding her amendment to the motion because I knew that's something she wanted. So if she wants to clarify what that
yeah,
means.
if I may, any applicable publications, of course not like a fashion magazine, but something where it applies to
Okay.
this scope of work.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does that help, DJ?
I think clarification, I think further clarification, because, I'm certainly no expert in marketing this kind of work. I'm just not. Inclusivity is very important, but an exhaustive list of all journals locally I'm concerned about the labor intensity of that and perhaps timelines regarding that. So I am concerned about such a broad motion. But I am definitely in favor of the inclusivity, like the example that you proposed. That's great.
Aaron, you want to jump in?
I think to clarify the spirit of what we're looking at is we would look at industry standard advertising outlets like the Daily Journal of Commerce, which is our Pacific Northwest journal that contractors go to look for public contracts. So are there any others, maybe like Councilor Jose mentioned, but we'll focus on those that are industry specific to this type of advertising.
And does that jive with your motion?
Yeah, the spirit of it really is to find the best price for the
Yep.
work. Yeah.
Okay, so is everybody happy with that? Oh, Rick, you have a question? Mm-hmm.
I think one aspect of that too that comes out in construction is that for a project of this size, there's very few companies that are eligible to be able to do it, so they focus on a certain publication. But I think ultimately, you hope whoever gets a project will then solicit local contractors to help them in different aspects when they're available and capable of. So I see there's two levels of advertising. One is the level we're at right now, and later will be when the contract is let out. So I think we'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I will move on and just keep the motion as it is with the understanding. Jason's got it, Aaron's got it, you've got it out there. Okay, I vote yes. Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Brian?
No.
Okay, with that, 6-1, moving forward. Okay, next on our agenda, we have appointments. The motion appointing one member for the historical buildings and site, the only candidate we had withdrew her application, unfortunately, so that's back to the drawing board. So the second motion, appointing 2 members to the Housing Advisory Committee. I believe you have is it pink? Yes, a pink sheet, so if you can circle, one is a citizen at large and one is a developer builder. It's my understanding that the Housing Advisory Committee recommended citizen at large, Molly Nichols, and developer builder be Craig Dent, but it's up to you. So if you could fill that out and pass it down, we'll get on with the count.
So typically in these things, we provide opportunity for
Yes, yeah, if
Sure.
anybody wants to make a motion.
Kind
I
of
mean,
all
not
we
make
do.
a motion, but say, and add something to that, that's fine. Thank you,
Okay,
TJ.
sure. Yeah, I'd just like to support the recommendation of Housing Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thanks, DJ. And while we're waiting on that, I will remind everybody that this Monday's workshop will be the housing, where some of the bankers, local loan people, and the builders will be coming to have a discussion on the housing issue. So it's my understanding we'll be sitting in the audience and they'll be sitting up here. So that should be an adventure. So we have a citizen at large, one for Lori Arthur, one for Dat Lam, and 6 for Molly Nichols. For the developer builder, we have 5 for Craig Dent and 1 for Michael Masters. So I would entertain a motion. Go ahead, DJ.
I move to appoint per majority.
Okay, that would be Molly Nichols for citizen at large and Craig Dent for developer and builder. Is there a second? Brian, yes, go ahead. Question?
Would you mind clarifying the support?
I have to go through it. Sorry. Okay, so I have myself voted for Molly Nichols and Craig Dent. Rob voted for Molly Nichols and Craig Dent. BD is, Brian, sorry, Molly Nichols and Craig Dent. Ooh, DJ, thank you, Molly Nichols and Craig Dent. Rick, is that Rick? Molly Nichols and Michael Masters. Sorry, gotta work on my handwriting, folks. You know I do teach handwriting on the side. And is this Kurt? Voted for citizen at large, actually Lori Arthur and Dat Long, and nobody for developer builder. And Vanessa votes for Molly Nichols and Craig Dent. So does that?
Thank you.
You bet. So with that, the motion from DJ was to appoint Molly Nichols, citizen at large, Craig Dent as developer builder. Do I have a second to that? Thank you, Brian. And go ahead, DJ, how do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Valerie? Yes. Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. And we have one other motion, appointing one member of the Collaborative Economic Development Committee. There was only one candidate, and I will tell you what happened because I am the liaison. They had one candidate, but they weren't sure he fit the retail business because he is a veteran, he works with veterans, and so they called him in and had a discussion. He has worked in the retail in the past in another state, so he does have a lot of past experience working in retail. He's retired, he was really gung-ho, and so they showed a preference to have him join the committee. So with that, I will make a motion to appoint, now I can't remember his name. What was it? Mark Woods, thank you, to the Collaborative Economic Development Committee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Kurt. So I vote yes. Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
Okay. Unanimous. And that brings us to public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item for the council. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not to individuals. At the conclusion of public comment, council will have the opportunity to respond. This meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. So we do have a blue slip from Rika Brown. So Rika, you want to come up and give your thoughts?
Rika Brown, Grants Pass. Rogue Retreat is not ready to take on an urban campground. Maybe the city should build a real solution for the homeless that will satisfy the federal judge that has put our city under an injunction to allow sleeping through the night in parks. Because the city lacks low-barrier shelters that can handle all comers. You don't need a nonprofit to do this. None of the solutions you have considered is adequate to cover the problem, helping too few people and having too high a barrier for most. Nonprofits are not willing to do anything big, and they want to help only those who pass muster. We have a homeless population that is around 1,000. As long as we have too few beds or are too picky about who gets them, we will have people sleeping in our parks. Tiny houses and urban campgrounds take too much land per person. Warming and cooling shelters are nearly useless for those who need a place to sleep every night or day. You can still buy that property near the hospital, build a hostel that will sleep hundreds, and then find a property to build another because we need two, one for adults only and one for families and children. You can fund them by selling stock to the citizens of this county. They would not be charities, but for-profit businesses, charging enough people $5 to $10 a night for them to have use of cots, footlockers, showers, bathrooms, a laundromat, dog kennels, a parking lot, and access to services. That much money is not a high barrier. These people often rent and share hotel and motel rooms. Some know how to beg, and many of them work, but have no certain place to sleep, shower, or keep their stuff. Start thinking about these people as customers, a market that can be served, and don't insult them with searches. Do hotels search their guests? They can keep their guns and drugs as long as they keep them out of sight, just like any hotel. One thing you would not be selling is privacy, apart from semi-private bathrooms and showers. But you can serve the bottom of the housing market, so people can sleep out of the weather, stay clean, and have a footlocker to keep their stuff, so they can work. Once these hostels are going concerns, you can sell them, with conditions that they remain hostels at a low barrier price. Thank you.
Okay, any other person want to speak? 3 minutes? All right. Sir?
Good evening. I'm here tonight to discuss an issue that happened last Thursday with city manager, my wife, and DJ, and Mr. DeLaGrange. Sadly, they were in a meeting together discussing numerous items, and I guess Brian was silent and did not speak at the issues at hand. At the end, Valerie asked Brian if he had any comments or added discussion. And Brian, for some reason, was not happy, as Valerie and DJ are coming from totally different perspectives than Brian on issues. And all he had to say was, I have nothing to say. Then DJ said, that does not surprise me. And then Brian said to both of them, F you, but with the full word. So I'm here tonight to say that my wife did not deserve that. DJ did not deserve that, nor did Aaron. I'm at the meeting tonight asking for Mr. DeLaGrange to resign. He should not hold a position on this council. He treats the public with disrespect and other council members with disrespect. Gets up and leaves the meeting when things don't go his way. Right now, he avoids talking about issues because he's a county commissioner candidate. I hate to be here. I don't know why Scott Stoddard and the Courier love him, but they shouldn't. I ask this council to reprimand him at a minimum. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I guess the question is, do we have any emails? And then we'll go back and refer to those.
So there were two, one regarding homeless housing possibilities and another with concerns the urban campground and its proposed effectiveness.
Okay, and at this point, I will offer if anybody wants to add any comments for public comment or the emails. Brian?
Well, I'll just say that what you said is factually untrue. And I'll also say that we have rules that individual counselors are not supposed to be singled out during public comment, which was not enforced. Thank you.
Okay, yes, DJ?
So what happened, as described, is exactly what happened. We, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But Rika, I like your idea. That's a different idea. It is not following the trend of the popular current ideas for solving these issues. And I'm interested in any and more information that you have regarding that idea. I think that it's worthy of pursuit.
All right, Vanessa?
I think it's difficult for anybody to come forward to the council and ask for them to take action on something that happened behind private and closed doors, especially something that maybe we're hearing about for the first time tonight. If it was something that involved public record and a police report, we potentially could have an actual opinion on it, but otherwise a private meeting, I don't know how the council could possibly have an opinion on that.
Okay, Rob?
Yeah, it did occur to me probably a little bit late in Bill's comments that clearly does violate how we do public comment, that no single counselor is supposed to be singled out. And it's an unusual situation because, you know, his wife was involved with making that judgment call, and she may not have even realized, because she's not usually the mayor or in the mayor's seat, that actually he should not have been permitted to continue on with that line of thinking. And I know that, maybe you're hearing that for the first time tonight. We all know that that's true, but I understand that Valerie probably wasn't quite ready to enforce it because she doesn't usually sit in the mayor's seat. So it was essentially something that we shouldn't have heard, number one, and number two, as Vanessa says, we have no way to know how valid it is or isn't. So there's nothing that I'm prepared to do along those lines, or think should be done. And I would hope in the future that we all can understand that he should have been cut off as soon as he's singled out. And I know it was probably an honest mistake on Valerie's part, but he should have been cut off instantly. But that didn't happen tonight. But I do want to comment on Rika's suggestion. I know that Rika for many years, probably at least a decade or maybe more, has been talking about setting up a hostel, not a youth hostel, but adult hostels and so forth in Grants Pass. And I more recently, though, just the last year or so, it's been kind of brought to my attention from people who interact closely with the homeless, people who administrate at the Gospel Mission and others, that many of the homeless, and I'm going to generalize, but hopefully it's okay for now, many of the homeless have trouble in close social situations. And it's really hard to know who those would be, who would be uncomfortable bunking next to someone closely, and it's not necessarily a great situation for allowing weapons, as she mentioned. So I tend to believe that I know that can be a real challenge at the Gospel Mission, is that many of the homeless are not really comfortable in very, very tight social situations, which is in some cases why they are homeless, in some cases why they choose independence and living outdoors rather than being in a shelter. So that is something to really seriously consider when you think about a hostel. It's great ideas, but when, just talking about $5 a night, who in the world knows how much that a facility like that would actually cost? That's just a figure that sounds good for an initial discussion, but I mean, it doesn't sound realistic. But I appreciate the effort or the thought and the concern to solve that problem, because we need to solve it. I just have doubts that actually will do it, given the potential personalities involved and the potential personality conflicts involved. Thank you.
And I would also like to add, Rika, because I agree, I've often thought the same thing. That sounds great, but when you have to have an initial investor who's willing to make that investment, and you also have, I would be really interested if you could tell me where some of them are, because I do think it sounds like a great idea. And if there is some place that can build them and do them to a code that works for the amount of money that is out there, I would be open to hearing about them. So that's what I would be interested in finding out, is if indeed you can give us the information to show where there is one that's functioning, where something like that has been built. So anyway, I agree. I've often thought it sounded good, but in terms of investment, it's a whole different thing. So, okay, with that, and I do apologize for not cutting off. You're right, it didn't come to my attention until I read that last statement and went, whoa. Anyway, so I'm going to move ahead to our consent agenda. Items included are of such routine nature or without controversy so that they may be approved with a single action. I am going to ask at this point, Vanessa, if she would still like to have a discussion on 5B. Okay, so I am
Yes,
going to
please.
say that there is a star item on 5B. I am very familiar with Safe Routes to School and the Lincoln Elementary project because I have been working on it since I first came on council, which was in 2015. When I walked the neighborhood and talked with the neighborhood about it. And it is a process because here we are 7 years later and we're still in the process. Welcome to government. So I'm going to let Wade get up and just kind of talk about that process really quick, if that's okay, and tell us how this step works.
Good afternoon, or good evening, Council. So yeah, the Safe Routes to School grant, we knew we were gonna have to get right away for this project the whole time. What really happened was after we'd scoped it, we didn't know and we couldn't get our hands around how much it was gonna be and where it was gonna be. So after we got final survey and completed our 30% design package, at this point we were able to identify how many properties we needed right away from and roughly how much. So at the end of this, we got 39 properties that we needed to acquire some right away from for our current design. And 39 properties is just too much for staff to do, too much for Aaron and Augustus to do as well. That would have taken up a lot of time. There's also some state and federal funding involved in this one, which requires appraisals, appraisal reviews, title reports, all of those things. Take a lot of time and kind of contributed to how expensive this actual contract is. So we went out and did an we went and solicited some proposals from some people that were uniquely qualified. Their companies were to do this kind of work, got a couple of them back, and picked the lowest one that would provide the good amount of service that we needed. So at this point, we'll be looking for them to start getting appraisals and title reports after we reach 60% plans. So at 60% plans, generally you've got a pretty good idea of how much you need, and it's close enough that you can start trying to acquire some right away at that point. When these agreements are made, so in this instance the consultant will be getting the appraisals, doing the appraisal reviews, initial title reports, and doing the negotiations on behalf of the city. At that point, we'll likely try to come forward with a big bundle of them together to get council approval at that point before we actually purchase them. This is roughly $250,000 for this contract, which is well within the confines of the 1.7 something million dollars that we got from the state of Oregon for this grant. After this contract is done, there will still be an additional cost that is the actual property purchase. In some cases, and actually in a lot of them, it's like a little triangle at the corner where the ADA ramp needs to go, and it's 20 square feet. So on those ones, it's not going to be a whole lot of money, and some of them it's going to be more. We'll take into account all the normal things that we would in these acquisitions, like if they have a big mature tree that we need to take down, well, trees have value and they're compensated for those. So those will all be included in the agreements. So at that point, do you have any questions that I can help with?
Brian?
So when we secure those properties, is that cost within this estimate, or is that going to be an additional cost beyond this?
That'll be in excess of this contract. But I really need their help to find out how much that is. I could go off of probably appraisals, or real market values based on Josephine County's tax assessor maps. Might give me in the ballpark, but that's what we're hiring professionals for.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And my question is, after you come back with the bundle, it does come back as a council action, and at that point it is approved, correct? So at that
Yep.
point there would be public A public hearing?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
hopefully we can get it in a bundle, otherwise I'll be in front of you 39 times.
No, a bundle would be fine.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind people too, in this day and age, the Northeast, which we're starting with Lincoln, is the oldest part of town, and therefore they did not have requirements to put in a lot of sidewalks. So there are a lot of pieces and parts in places where there are no sidewalks, and it does make it difficult for children to walk to school, and that's the purpose of this. And so that's why in this one particular, there probably may be more than there would in any of the other ones that we are hoping to get through, because we do have, at this point, we have gone through and we have a plan for all of the schools in the district, but Lincoln was the one was approved, I think, in 2016. Parkside is currently in the process of hopefully being approved. So the whole idea is to go through this, but Lincoln will probably be, in terms of right-of-way, may be more expensive because it doesn't have a lot of sidewalks. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Vanessa? Okay. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Yeah, I don't have any opposition to this project. I made a mistake and I originally intended to ask for it to be added to council action. Thank you for modifying it and adding it as a start item this evening. I just ask in the future that any project, no matter what step we are in, if it authorizes the moving forward of acquiring private land, I just ask that there's a public comment opportunity.
Yes, Brian?
After we're done with this item, I had a question about another consent item, if I may.
Okay, so are we okay with moving forward? And like I said, I do know this one will come before us again, before it does. Okay, great, thank you. And Brian, what item do you want to talk about?
It is item, it's the next item, 5C, the hearings officer. I just had a question because it says we established the position and then it directs staff to contract with a qualified individual. Does council approve that individual or is that a staff level approval?
So the municipal code says that the council can delegate hearing the park exclusion order to a hearings officer. It's unclear whether or not that's going to be a hearings officer chosen by council. As city attorney, I feel uniquely placed to be able to put feelers out for qualified individuals who could serve in this capacity.
So does that answer your question?
It does. It sounds like it's still kind of an unanswered question. I personally would prefer if council makes that decision.
Rob, you want to add something?
Yeah, with Augustus, I have to wonder when you say put feelers out to choose that person, why wouldn't it essentially be like an RFP situation? Where you
because
get
it may be one person for one hearing who decides that the gig isn't for them and they don't want to do it again, and then we might have to go out again to find somebody else, and that process could theoretically continue. Or we might not ever get another park exclusion.
I mean, I understand that concern, but you send feelers out for a particular person, it sounds to me like a kangaroo court, quite frankly. So, I just, especially since
I don't think
the city, we wrote that ordinance, it just seems like we're choosing, who are handpicked.
It's not an individual who's going to be, who's going to be friendly to the city necessarily. It's going to be an individual. It's going to be an individual who has the proper legal qualifications, is able to know what is excludable evidence versus what is admissible evidence, who has a legal background.
Yeah. Well, I would certainly, like to hear your opinion on that, if you had people involved, because I would probably go with your recommendation. But I don't know that the city attorney should be, or the city manager should be the one to choose that. I would certainly want your input in choosing it, but I don't think that you should be the final arbiter or the city manager should be the final arbiter. That's my opinion, one of 8 councilors.
DJ.
Yeah, just adding my interpretation, per municipal code states that city council may appoint a hearings officer. I think that's, in my subjective opinion, pretty clear about who the final say in appointing the hearings officer is. The mechanism by which they search for a candidate is really immaterial for me, because we'll have the final decision.
Well, I'm just going to say this particular resolution simply says establishing a hearings officer. So I'm assuming that you would come forward to us when the next step.
Council is certainly going to meet the hearings officer before park exclusion hearing, but yeah, that's a given.
And they have to have certain qualifications, correct? So
Yes, so you're going to need to have a legal background, have a background to know, again, what evidence is admissible versus excludable. So that if there's any attorneys involved with the park exclusion hearing, it's going to be a more fluid process. It'll be a little bit more formal.
did you want to add something, Aaron?
Yeah, just getting a general consensus and to clarify with council that council would be appointing a hearings officer. You're establishing that there is going to be a hearings officer and that you're not going to be the one hearing it. And so we'll be bringing forward to you the potential candidate or candidates for your approval of the hearings officer to hear it.
Okay, thank you. So with that, if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and have Rob read the consent agenda for us.
Okay. Item A, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for Lawn Ridge Park pickleball and basketball courts project number LB 6189. B, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a right-of-way services contract for the Safe Routes to School Lincoln Elementary project. C, resolution establishing a hearings officer for park exclusion appeal hearings. D, resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the water treatment plant solids hauling. E, resolution transferring $72.60 of the American Rescue Plan funds to the eligible replacement water treatment plant project within the Water Capital Fund. F, resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a grant application and upon award accept an air scrubber and funding from Oregon Department of Human Services, Resilience and Emergency Management grants and support for emergency shelters program in the Grants Pass Emergency Shelter, or for the Grants Pass Emergency Shelter. G, resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application and upon award enter into an agreement for loan funds from Business Oregon to help finance the replacement water treatment plant project. H, motion approving the development code text amendment to Article 14, certain uses, municipal code text amendment to Title 11, marijuana business findings of fact. I, motion approving the minutes of City Council meeting of August 3rd, 2022. J, motion approving the minutes of the City Council special meeting of August 22nd, 2022. K, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Parks Advisory Committee meeting of June 9th, 2022. L, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Urban Area Planning Commission meeting of July 13th, 2022. M, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Sustainability and Energy Action Task Force meeting of July 13th, 2022. N, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Tourism Advisory Committee meeting on June 7th, 2022. O, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Committee on Public Art meeting of July 12th, 2022. P, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Central Business District Vitalization Task Force meeting of July 19th, 2022. And Q, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Collaborative Economic Development meeting of June 23rd, 2022.
And with that, I'll make a motion that the consent agenda is approved. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Rick. I vote yes. Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Okay. So we move on to matters from mayor, council, and staff. Any mayor, council members have comments? Go ahead, Rob.
First, I wanted to even though we shouldn't have heard the testimony from Bill Lovelace, I want to just go on the record as saying I do agree that no one should be spoken to in the manner that he described, certainly in that setting. Whether or not it actually happened, I'm not going to comment on, but I would agree that that was behavior like that or language like that would be inappropriate. Beyond that, I also wanted to bring up something that I called Augustus about earlier today, and we had a good discussion about it, but I'm still not sure, and I think I'd like to get council's opinion. We have a situation, I had a couple of, actually, at this point now, two constituents come to me about concerns they had about Gilbert Park, and there was tennis lessons for young kids and some teenage girls, and there are a lot of homeless now at Gilbert Park, especially the overnight car campers. And it occurred to me, and actually occurred to this constituent who wanted me to bring this forward, that since Gilbert Park and Eckstein Park do not belong to the city, they belong to the school district, I have to wonder, I mean, I'll put it this way, I would like to see the city manager and or city attorney speak with the school district about potentially prohibiting activities from dusk to dawn on school district property or on school district owned parks, because it just seems to me that the school district, I would have a hard time imagining that though that school district property was actually considered in the injunction that we are under. So I feel that the school district could possibly intervene and prevent the essentially the homeless encampments, the overnight at those two locations. And if the rest of the council would, or majority of the council would agree with me, I would like to see the city manager, the city attorney approach the school district and talk about that subject.
Any comments? It sounds good to me personally. I like that idea because you're right, Gilbert Creek does have a lot of people, and there's a lot of people, kids that go up to that park. So I guess we can turn it over to Augustus.
So really the only issue that I have with it is that a school district is still an apparatus of the state. A school district is still constrained by the Bill of Rights. A school district is still going to effectively be bound by any Eighth Amendment challenges that have been made in previous courts. I do believe that this is a decision for the school district to make should they choose to make it. However, there is ample case law to back up the assertion that an apparatus of the state or even a private entity that's taking on state functions is going to have a very difficult time establishing that, that their interpretation of how they can use their property is going to be substantiated. Another issue is that the injunction itself says all parks within the city limits, except for Reinhardt Volunteer Park. The injunction does not make clear that it's city-owned parks.
I think if there's interest, what might be best is that Augustus and I take a look at this. We also meet with our current legal counsel and address some of those issues and give you a confidential memo on that topic.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good to me. Does that sound good to you, Rob? I agree. Okay, any other comments from Mayor or anybody else? I guess I'm the Mayor, the Mayor's not here. Okay, I'm just gonna make one quick one, and that is just a shout out once again to those firefighters, what that they've done. We went down and visited the camp the other day, several of us, that they could come in and set up that tent, that town in such a short time and bring in 2,200 firefighters to fight in our community is amazing. And a shout out to them. That was amazing. And I also just want to bring up that Ride Along the Rogue is happening on September 24th. People can still sign up to support the extension of the Greenway from Ashland all the way for bicyclists, all the way to Grants Pass. So if you just go to www.ridetherogue.com, you can sign yourself up for a 20-mile, 40-mile, or 63-mile metric Centurion for all those hardcore bicyclists. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
I just have one thing. I'm not sure if we thanked council last meeting with regards to your volunteerism at the fair, but we had an amazing turnout. I think it was record-breaking this year.
Second.
It was-
Second.
It was the second one. I think we had about 1,300 people go through, and one booth, I think it had 140, I think 140 in a 3-hour session.
So
Which was
everyone
lovely.
was jamming when it comes to people going through. We had a lot of good conversations and greatly appreciate the mayor and council that volunteered at the booth. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else down on the staff have something they'd like to add? All righty. No more, no executive session, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Vanessa?
I move to adjourn.
All right, seconded by DJ. And we are officially adjourned at 7:44. Before 8 o'clock, I did it.